What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. So I'm going over 6 players that I've been looking to sell high on after week 4 of the NFL. It's been a super exciting first 4 weeks. It's a lot of fun. Most of my teams are doing pretty well. I hope your guys' are too. And whether or not you're doing really well or whether or not you're doing really poorly, it's important to understand that it's a long season. We want to make sure that we're improving our teams as the season goes on. And trading is one of the most fun and honestly the best ways to do that. It's one of the easiest ways to just totally change the trajectory of your season. Making sure that you know when to time the market on players, when you can sell high, when you can buy low on players is really important in terms of making sure we're not overreacting to what's happening, and also making sure that we're taking into account changes in scheme or personnel across rosters and really adapting to what's going on across the league. So really one of my favorite things to do across in fantasy football is just make these videos, make trades in fantasy, and really sort of identify which players that I think are going to turn around or whether or not I think they're overperforming. And it's a lot of fun for me. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos as well. So these 6 players are players that if I have on any of my fantasy teams, I'm certainly looking to move them. They're guys that I would highly recommend you sell high on as well. And that's just because they're a sell high. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to just give them away for anything, but they're definitely guys that I've been looking to capitalize on their value right now because I don't think they're necessarily going to be any higher. So if you guys have any questions about specific trades you guys have floating around, let me know in the comments. I love helping you guys make those trades. If you guys have any specific questions about a player that maybe I didn't address or any disagreements about a player on this list, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. I love interacting with you guys there. So yeah, with that, let's just get into the first player on this list. So the first sell high for me this week is actually going to be Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton has 3 touchdowns over the first 4 games this season, and Judy obviously missed week 1 and really just hasn't seemed like himself quite yet. On top of that, Marvin Mims is only going to get more and more involved in this offense, so I do fully expect Courtland Sutton's target share to drop as the season goes on. We do have to remember that Greg Dulcich, who's currently on IR as well, will return at some point. That's just another mouth to feed in this Broncos offense, and I do think that Courtland Sutton, although he is pretty clearly the wide receiver 1 in this offense so far, Marvin Mims looks to be the most talented wide receiver on this roster. We've seen Jerry Jeudy be the wide receiver 1 in this offense before, and I just don't want to bet on Courtland Sutton ending up as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And even if he does do that, I don't really see a world where Courtland Sutton finishes the season with 12 touchdowns. That's currently what he's on pace for. He's on pace for just over 12, actually. And he's currently only the wide receiver 25 on the season, despite having 3 touchdowns scored so far. He's had 2 performances where he got absolutely bailed out by touchdowns at the end of the game. He had another performance against the Commanders where he really was just a goose egg through most of the game and ended up with a couple garbage time catches where they tried to come back down late. And I just really don't see a world where he ends up being a reliable starter throughout the course of the season. I have him on 2 of my teams. I've been starting him so far, and I've been happy with the production, but the fact of the matter is I don't feel comfortable starting him in my lineup every single week. I do fully expect the shoe to drop at some point because I do expect Jerry Jeudy to get more involved. This Broncos offense only has 1 rushing touchdown in the season as well. As well as this offense is playing so far, I don't expect them to have 9 passing touchdowns for every 1 rushing touchdown. That's going to balance out a little bit more. So we're just going to see the touchdown distribution of this offense drop quite a bit. If the Broncos do get any better as well, we're probably going to see them lean on the running game a little bit more, throw a little bit less, and their schedule does get a little bit easier towards the latter half of the season. So I think as the season goes on, we're going to see a little bit less usage of this passing game out of Denver. Courtland Sutton should really decrease in his role. The touchdown share should go down. So if you can trade him for a wide receiver 2 value, I would definitely be looking to do that. I wouldn't be looking to just give him away. I do think he's a useful asset and will probably continue to be like a fringe flex-worthy player, a guy that's going to be good for you guys in weeks where he scores, and a guy that's going to be, he'll give you some points if he doesn't, but he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy that I want to be trusting as a weekly staple in my lineup. And if you can trade him for that caliber of a player, I would definitely be looking to do that. Next wide receiver that I've been looking to sell high on, I believe he's made this list before, is going to be Adam Thielen. And I know he's been great so far this season. He's averaging 17.6 PPR fantasy points per game. That is insane. That is on pace, has him as the wide receiver 10 on the season so far. But the fact of the matter is, this Panthers offense is just absolutely awful. Bryce Young looks like he's just not NFL ready at all. He looks like he's at best the third rookie wide receiver in this, or rookie quarterback in this class so far with how well CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson are playing. And his best game for Adam Thielen actually came with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Andy Dalton threw the ball 56 times against Seattle. It let Adam Thielen catch like 12 passes, score a touchdown, and he's coming off of 2 straight really fantastic matchups against the Seahawks, who always struggle against slot wide receivers, and then against the Vikings, who certainly give it up in the passing game. So these matchups were really favorable for him, and we saw this be a team that really did have to throw the ball quite a bit. I don't expect the Panthers to lean on their passing game quite as much. I think that because of the Miles Sanders injury this last week, they tried to lean on their passing game a little bit more because Miles Sanders wasn't 100%. Although the schedule does continue to be favorable for the Carolina Panthers, I just don't think Adam Thielen can keep up this production. Jonathan Mingo is inactive in this game. We saw Terrace Marshall actually lead the team in targets. DJ Chark is still getting ramped up coming off of his injury. And Adam Thielen is an old player. He's 31, I believe. Sooner or later, he's going to be sort of coming down off that cliff. I do expect him to sort of ramp down his production as the season goes on. And if you could trade him with that name value, with that top 10 wide receiver production, I would definitely be looking to do that. Is a question mark as to whether or not his body can hold up throughout the whole course of the season. I think he's overperforming even regardless of health, and he's certainly just a guy that I'd be looking to get value for. If you can get wide receiver 2 value for him, I would definitely do that because I don't think he's going to be a guy that you're comfortable starting every single week the rest of the season. One more wide receiver on this list. It's actually going to be Puka Nacua, and this one's hard for me to put on the list because he's just been so good so far this season, and I truly do believe that he's a good NFL wide receiver. He's going to have a really successful career in the NFL, and if this is Dynasty, I'm absolutely holding on to Puka because I do think he's going to be somebody that really does establish himself as a meaningful contributor to your roster for the rest of his career. But in redraft, I do think you're probably going to see him sort of fall back into that wide receiver 2 range for the rest of the season. He's currently the wide receiver 4 overall on the season, and Cooper Kupp will be back as soon as this week. Sounds like the Rams are going to really be careful with Cooper Kupp, so maybe he ramps up for a week or two before he steps on the field. But when Cooper Kupp comes back in this offense, I think it's pretty safe to say that Cooper Kupp does immediately become the number 1 in this offense. Puka becomes the number 2, and then you got Tutu Atwell operating as the number 3, and maybe Cooper Kupp just makes this offense so much better that there's more touchdown equity to go around, and Puka can keep up this level of production. But that would make this Rams offense one of the top 3 offenses in the NFL. I don't see them being quite that good. They'll still probably continue to be a fringe top 10 offense, and Puka's going to end up with an 18 to 20% target share, and he'll be good. He'll be a guy that you can use in fantasy, and a guy that's probably going to be a startable wide receiver 2 for you guys. But right now he's the wide receiver 4 overall, and I don't see that production or even wide receiver 1 overall production or a wide receiver 1 level of production continuing for Puka. So if you can trade him for wide receiver 1 value, I'd absolutely be looking to do that. I know he's a super fun player to have on your team. You probably got him off waivers, and he's done a lot to help your roster. But unless you have Cooper Kupp, then I'd probably look to just hold him as a nice insurance piece. But if you don't have Cooper Kupp, I think I would be looking to move off of Puka Nacua. He's a guy that I do think will slow down as the season goes on. His production is just way too high, or he's been way too productive so far to continue that up throughout the rest of the season. Cooper Kupp's going to come in and limit his targets, and it's just not going to be something that can continue. He'll still be good, but if you can trade him for that top level of value, I'd definitely be looking to sell high right now. Up next, we've got the first running back on this list, and that's going to be Devon Achane. And this one does have me a little bit scared. It could certainly be one of my takes that ends up biting me in the ass here, but I just don't really see a world where Achane ends up getting, or Achane, sorry, I know he requested that we change how we're pronouncing his name. I just don't see a world where Devon Achane ends up being a workhorse in this offense. He only saw 11 touches in week 4. I think a lot of people are sort of overlooking that. He only had 8 carries. He only had 3 receptions, and the 3 receptions are nice, but he really just wasn't by any means a workhorse in this offense. Raheem Mostert saw just as much work as Devon in this game. He's certainly a guy that we know the Dolphins like. I know Mostert fumbled twice this week, and that could potentially see a shift towards Devon Achane going forward. But Jeff Wilson will be coming back off of IR at some point. We don't really know a whole lot about his injury, but he's eligible to return as soon as week 5. We know the Dolphins like Salvon Ahmed as well. This could be a really just messy backfield with how many backs they like in this offense. And even though I do think Achane is by far the most explosive player in this offense, he does have, or in this backfield, by no means this offense. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle would have a lot to say about that. But he's got 6 touchdowns so far in the last 2 games. He's averaging 11.4 yards per carry. Just for context, for those of you who don't know, in elite yards per carry in the NFL, I'm talking all-time historical levels, or guys like Jamal Charles, Nick Chubb. They end up with around 5 yards per carry. So Devon Achane is overproducing by more than double of that. His career yards per carry will certainly drop to around that 5 yards per carry, even if he ends up being an elite NFL running back. So the production is certainly going to fall. He's not going to average 3 touchdowns a game. He's not going to average over 10 yards per carry. So unless we see that workload ramp up to a 15 to 20 touch role, which I don't really see happening. I think we'll see him that 10 to 15 touch role for the rest of the season. Makes him like a running back 2 for me for the rest of the season. A guy that, he'll break off some big runs, and he's a super explosive player. So he'll have some weeks where he'll have that 50-yard rushing touchdown and be a really awesome contributor for you. But he'll have other weeks where he has 9 carries and 2 catches, and he'll have 9 carries for 45 yards and 2 catches for 10. And you have a really mediocre performance at best. So if you can sell him as the next elite running back 1, a rookie running back on an elite offense that's just breaking out and turning that corner, I think I would look to do that. I don't see a world where he ends up getting enough of a workload to really continue this level of production. The touchdowns are obviously unsustainable. The yards per carry is obviously unsustainable. If you can sell him as a running back 1 for the rest of the season, I think I would look to get that value out of him. Next up, we've got a quarterback on this list, and for me, that's going to be Justin Fields. You really did get what you needed if you're a Justin Fields manager. You got a matchup with the Denver Broncos. It's the perfect salve to any broken offense, and Fields just lit up the Broncos for a career-best performance. He had over 300 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, and even with that being said, the Bears still didn't design running plays for him. That's really what we want to see out of Justin Fields if he's going to turn a corner and be a meaningful fantasy contributor. He only had like 25 rushing yards in this one. They are, for whatever reason, basically making Justin Fields a pocket passer, and that's just not how he should be utilized, especially from a fantasy football standpoint. And even with that being said, over the second half of the game, the Broncos did seem to eventually figure him out. It led to a strip sack and a game-losing interception. The Bears seemed to lose confidence in Fields after the strip sack. They took the ball out of his hands and ran the ball a couple times, led to a turnover on downs. Fields is just not a good NFL quarterback at this point in his career. It's sort of up in the air as to whether or not he ever will be. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And if you can sell high on this, it's like a turning point for him in the season or in this career. He probably was. I mean, you're probably not going to see a situation where he puts up over 300 yards or 4 touchdowns ever again this season, if not ever again in his career. The Broncos have been by far the worst defense in the NFL so far this season. As we know, they gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins, so it's tough to put too much stock in what Justin Fields did. And even with that, he had 2 brutal mistakes that cost him the game. They're not going to want to lean on him as a passer. He's not a guy that I think could do a lot if they're not designing run plays for him as well. So if you can sell him as a top 10 quarterback, I think you definitely should do that. He's a guy that I just don't want to feel comfortable starting week over week. Obviously, he has enough of a rushing floor that he's not going to completely kill you week to week, but I just don't think that ceiling's there. I was worried about drafting him coming into the offseason. He was one of the guys that I really wasn't drafting any of, and I was worried about it. But what I was worried about is coming true. He's just not a very good passer. He's not being involved as a rusher enough to really offset that, and he's somebody that I don't think I want to be starting week to week. So if you can trade him for any sort of value that you can start in your lineup, I would definitely be looking to do that. And last but certainly not least, we've got one more bear I wanted to talk about. I think this might become a common trend where we're looking to sell high on players after they play the Denver Broncos, unless they turn things around on defense there. But Khalil Herbert is clearly the running back that the Bears want to utilize when they have a lead. He played a season high 78% of snaps in this one. His previous high on the season was a 60% snap share, and that took it to 22.2 PPR fantasy points. He finishes the RB8 in the week, and that's a really good performance. We know Khalil Herbert's a really talented player. I personally do think he's good enough to be an NFL or a lead back for an offense for the NFL. I do think he's a talented player, but he's not going to get to play the Broncos every week. We just saw the Broncos give up like 8 total touchdowns to the running back position just 2 weeks ago to the Dolphins. The Bears are not going to have a lead very often this season. They ended up getting up 28-7 in this game before falling behind. So it allowed them to lean on Khalil Herbert a little bit more than I think they'll be able to going forward. Obviously, the Bears are probably going to be one of those teams that's competing for the number 1 pick overall going forward. They're not going to be a team that wins probably any more than 3 or 4 games this season. And with that being said, Khalil Herbert's just not going to find himself in a position to succeed very often. Roschon Johnson is the clear pass-catching back that the Bears want to utilize, and when they're losing, Roschon Johnson will probably end up having better fantasy games than he had this week. That means that Khalil Herbert will struggle in those games as well, and I think if you could sell Khalil Herbert for like running back 2 value, sell high on this matchup, I think it's definitely something that I'd be looking to do. Really, this entire Bears offense would be a sell high for me. DJ Moore had a big game. I'd be looking to move off of him. Cole Kmet had 2 touchdowns. Pretty much every single Bear obviously had a really great performance because they played the Denver Broncos. I'd definitely be looking to sell all of those guys, but Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert especially are guys that I'd be looking to move off of. So that'll do it for this week's video where I went over 6 players that I've been looking to sell high on before week 5. Up next, I'll be doing my Thursday night primer where I'll preview the Thursday night football game, go over each player in that game, which fantasy relevant players I think you should be starting, which guys I'd be sitting, and sort of what the overall expectations should be for that game. So if you want to make sure you get access to that video along with my start sit video, which will come out on Saturday, where I'll go over every single matchup that's going to come out this week or in week 5, preview which players I've been looking to start and sit, and really help you guys get your lineup set. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It really just helps me grow the community. I love seeing this community grow. We're at over 860 subscribers, and I'd love to hit 1,000 by the end of the NFL season. It's been a personal goal of mine. I'd love to get there. I really appreciate all the support we've had. It's been super fun, really growing this channel and seeing how much involvement you guys have. So, again, like that, if you did like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Helps me know that I'm doing a good job. Helps me know that you want to see more content like this. And, yeah, I really just appreciate all you guys. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch the video, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.